Hello, anatomy colleagues. This is Dr. Alsup, and I'm super excited to get to spend some time really exploring all the main branches of the mandibular nerve, otherwise known as V3 or the third division of the trigeminal nerve. In this video, we're really going to focus on how to identify these structures within the infratemporal fossa. Many of these nerves we can see in other areas, but our focus for this video will be how to ID within the infratemporal fossa. So, as kind of a review from other materials, the mandibular nerve will exit the skull via the foramen ovale. And once it does this, it's going to be located in the infratemporal fossa, which we are looking at here. In this particular dissection, we are looking at a very deep view, or a very deep dissection of the infratemporal fossa. And you really need to be quite deep in order to see the bulk of V3. That means the arteries would have to be removed as well as any of the veins and many of the muscles. So it's going to be one of the deeper structures. There are three main components of V3. The main trunk, which is quite high. It is literally right where it comes out from the foramen ovale, and so it's fairly short and will almost immediately divide into an anterior division and a posterior division. And we are going to go through the main branches of each one of these divisions or trunks, and we're going to start with the main trunk. And we're starting with the hardest ones. The branches of the main trunk are by far the most difficult to locate, as they are usually quite small in comparison to some of the other fairly large V3 branches. These are going to be some V3 branches, but we're talking about nerves that are about this size. Don't despair. When we talk about many of these particular nerves, if you talk about where they go or you understand where they go or their target organ, this will help with identification. Okay, so we'll start with the meningeal branch, which I'm going to draw an arrow to right here. So that is going to be the meningeal branch. And you can see it's heading a bit posteriorly. And kind of the key for me is that it's going to accompany the middle meningeal artery through the foramen spinosum. And right here you can see a little bit of the middle meningeal artery right there. So you can see it's very closely related to that. The meningeal branch, as its name would suggest, is going to provide afferent supply to the meninges as well as the bone in that region. So if you can locate the middle meningeal artery, which I think is going to be made so much easier based on its distinct relationship with the auricular temporal nerve, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail later. If you can find that middle meningeal artery, then it's going to really help with identification of the meningeal branch. The nerve to the medial pterygoid is a very small nerve, but first let's find medial pterygoid right here. And you can see a little bit of that nerve. This little nerve right there is going to be the nerve to the medial pterygoid. So I look for the medial pterygoid muscle, and I can see that there is a nerve that looks like it's heading for its deep surface right there. You get a bonus too with this medial pterygoid. You can really see it heading to the medial side of the lateral pterygoid plate here for its attachment. But our focus is on nerve, so we got to get back to that. So there's that nerve to the medial pterygoid. It will often have two smaller nerves that will come off or branch from the nerve to the medial pterygoid. And they often come from a common trunk, and I'm going to draw another arrow right there. And I'm going to put a T next to these because this is going to be the common trunk for the nerve to the tensor tympani, which will be headed toward the middle ear, and the nerve to the tensor veli palatini, which is a muscle of the soft palate. So those particular nerve fibers will head in very different directions, but they often come off from a common trunk. Okay, so we started off with the harder stuff. Let's identify some of the larger branches now. Okay, so the anterior division in this dissection has been reflected somewhat superiorly in order to get a better view of the main trunk as well as the posterior division. But we can still see the main branches of the anterior division. So here is that anterior division. We will start with the buccal nerve, which you can see is one of the larger branches, particularly of the anterior division. The buccal nerve is often clinically referred to as the long buccal nerve. It does have a long expanse, and it will extend all the way down to the buccal space region, and afferently serves the region adjacent to the buccinator muscle, which you can just see quite beautifully right here. So here's your buccinator muscle here. Now, even though the buccal nerve is almost entirely afferent, it will give off an efferent branch or branches, which are referred to as the nerve to the lateral pterygoid. And you can even see a little branch of it right there. So there are these small nerves right there. You can see it ascending in this general region. It's difficult to conceptualize this one because the lateral pterygoid has been removed. But know that the buccal nerve often gives off the nerve to the lateral pterygoid. Now, this is important, and this is something that I think we've been thinking about throughout the course, but it's always good to remind. Do not confuse the buccal nerve with the buccal branches of the facial nerve. These are different nerves with different sources and different functions. The buccal branches of the facial nerve would be more superficial for the most part. There may be some small twigs of branches extending to the buccinator muscle, but remember, those buccal branches are going to be innervating those muscles of facial expression. It will also innervate the buccinator muscle, but the long buccal nerve is usually quite a bit more robust, and it is going to be a more dominant feature in these deeper dissections. Okay, next we are going to have the masseteric nerve, which is right here. It is cut in this dissection, but you can see the cut portion descending here, and this would enter the deep surface of the masseter muscle after traveling over the mandibular notch. So the masseter muscle has been completely removed in this dissection, which was quite necessary in order to see the deeper structures. And you can also have a variable number of deep temporal nerves that will efferently innervate the temporalis muscle. So you have one right here and one right here that are quite obvious. This is going to be the anterior deep, and this will be the posterior deep. They are not only variable in number, these deep temporal nerves, but they're also variable in terms of origin. So they're not always originating from the anterior division, but we're just discussing the most typical pattern. And usually there is an anterior and a posterior deep temporal nerve. Occasionally there will be a middle, but there isn't one in the case of this donor. Last but certainly not least is the posterior division, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is the biggest division. It will also have the largest and, I argue, the easiest to identify branches, and we love some nice easy identifications. So let's start with the auriculotemporal nerve, which, as I mentioned, has a very distinct anatomical relationship with the middle meningeal artery and the infratemporal fossa. And you can see right here the nerve fibers splitting around the middle meningeal artery right here. So basically forming a circle around the middle meningeal artery before coalescing back together to kind of head posterior to the TMJ and afferently serve this general region right here. Now think of where the parotid gland would be located pre-deep dissection. Where would it be? It would be here-ish, right? So it would be in this general region. So recall those postganglionic parasympathetic fibers that synapsed in the otic ganglion, which that otic ganglion is actually hiding deep to V3 right here, are going to be hitchhiking with the auriculotemporal nerve because it's providing that afferent innervation right around here. So a good way to get towards the parotid nerve. So this encircling of the middle meningeal artery is really important, an important anatomical relationship, and I think something that is easy to identify in a good dissection. Then we get to the lingual nerve and the inferior alveolar nerve, which are both quite large. They're both right here. The hardest thing is telling which one is which. So the lingual nerve will lie anterior to the inferior alveolar. So we know this is anterior. We have teeth here, the nose here, and this is posterior. So the lingual nerve will be anterior to the inferior alveolar nerve, which of course is ever so important in terms of dentistry. So this is your IAN, or inferior alveolar there. You can even see the chorda tympani, which is a branch of the facial nerve, joining the lingual nerve in the infratemporal fossa. And we'll talk about that relationship in a bit more detail in another video. Alright, so last but not least is the inferior alveolar nerve, as we identified right here. You can see that the inferior alveolar nerve will give off a small efferent branch right there. It will do so at about the level of the mandibular lingula, and the nerve to the mylohyoid, not hyaloid, the nerve to mylohyoid is going to be an efferent branch, and it will serve the mylohyoid and the anterior belly of digastric. And then from there, so it gives off this small branch, and then the inferior alveolar nerve is going to enter bone. And once it does so, it will form the inferior dental plexus. So it'll be kind of sending small branches out to the mandibular teeth, and we'll get into that in considerable more detail later. And it will actually continue through the bone and exit the bone right here at the mental foramen as the mental nerve, which is going to afferently serve the skin of the chin and the lower lip. So these are the nerve branches of V3, or the mandibular nerve. There were a lot, right? But this makes sense. It's quite a large nerve, and it has quite a large area to innervate. So we covered a lot of ground here. For nerves and arteries, both, I really try to understand what the target organs are, as this can really help in terms of identification. Oftentimes you'll see them going to those structures. Not all the time in particular dissections, but a good amount of the time. So it's really worth your time understanding the target organs of nerves, arteries, veins in terms of what they're draining. Alright, so that was a lot of fun. Thank you for your time and attention, and have an awesome day.